I'm Mark Babbitt, CEO and founder of U-Turn, and you are watching Eye on Business.
Welcome to Eye on Business and the innovation segment of the show. And tonight we are starting a special series on women entrepreneurs. So we're going to be looking at innovative products, innovative people, and innovative companies. And tonight we have with us Deborah Beresini. And she is a very special guest, a longtime friend and colleague. And Deborah has a very fascinating background as a woman entrepreneur. And so we're going to start off tonight by asking Deborah, tell us about the early years, if we can call them that. Your experience, what I remember is being with Silicon Valley Bank, something on the order of 4 venture capital funds. Maybe fill our audience in on what those early days were like.
The early days, well, I was actually with a venture fund before I was with Silicon Valley Bank. And as Silicon Valley Bank was growing, they were and this is in the early 90s, so they were trying to really open up loan production offices across the United States, and they just primarily had both coasts. So they wanted somebody who understood emerging growth companies, who understood what type of infrastructure it takes for a geographic hotspot. And they plucked me out of the venture industry and put me in charge of a division at a bank, which is actually very humorous because the only thing I knew about banks at the time is that if I wrote a check, I'd get cash back. But it was an incredible experience. We opened up a number of loan production offices across the western U.S. And I think that's been a very successful business, not only for the bank, but certainly very beneficial to the entrepreneurs in those regions.
Now you had, as I understand, you had some experience with Silicon Valley Bank, which was very near and dear to entrepreneurs. You worked with some venture funds, but at what point did you start your own fund?
Well, you know, timing is everything. So although hindsight's 2020, it was just as the dot-com bust was starting.
Okay.
So, but we raised a fund. We were focused on healthcare and basically software, and we invested in several companies. Luckily, a lot of those companies are still around.
Well, that's great. Now, how did you get interested in healthcare as a specialty area?
Well, I think it goes back to my childhood. There was a lot of family illnesses. My mother passed away when she was rather young. Okay. And then as I was becoming an adult, I actually have a daughter with special needs, and it's a genetic issue. So I got more and more pulled into learning about how to take care of yourself, about our genetic makeup, about how all these things interact. Okay. And it just became my passion.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming that when you started in the venture world, that there weren't a lot of fellow women entrepreneurs doing that. Can you share with our audience a little bit about what that was like?
There weren't very many.
Were there any, I guess is the question.
Yes, absolutely. And there's some great women out there who really paved the way. So I got to follow a little bit in that regard. Okay. But there used to be this large venture capital conference in Monterey, California every year called the American Electronics Association Conference. Okay. And it was probably the only conference at the time. And it was the be-all and end-all of the venture conferences. And so there'd be 500 venture capitalists there. Maybe 20 were women.
Okay, okay.
I could be off by a couple.
Now, what made you want to go into such an area? What was I mean, I understand the genesis of getting into healthcare, but what made you want to go into the venture capital world?
Well, it was really an accident. I was really working with a minority business development center at a university. And as I was working with those entrepreneurs, helping them take their products to market and getting them a little bit of MBDA funding is what it was at the time. In the very next room, they were creating a technology transfer venture fund. And they needed somebody who could be the CFO and had fundraising experience, both of which I had. Okay. So they pulled me in.
Okay. Now, we've talked about your interest in healthcare, and you and I have in common an interest in Hawaii biotech.
Yes.
I wonder if you could tell our audience a little bit about Hawaii Biotech. It's kind of a very different kind of company, and I know it's very scientific, so we have to try to use some language that I and others will understand here. So,
well, that's good, because if I speak in scientific terms, the scientists in the audience will roll their eyes. So basically, Hawaii Biotech is a vaccine development company, and vaccines are somewhat controversial. Flu vaccine, for example, is actually manufactured, created in eggs, like eggs that we have for breakfast. And this is a much different approach. This is based on a protein antigen, and the company produces that, and then they can then develop vaccines from that. And their specialty is infectious disease vaccines.
Now, my understanding is there's some particular advantages of this type of method of manufacturing, of developing and manufacturing vaccines. Can you maybe share a little bit about that?
Sure. Not all people will agree, because there's differing opinions, but we do think that it's safer. There are certainly little, if any, side effects. There weren't any side effects that came out that we could find. And it's certainly a less expensive way to produce a vaccine.
So I know that there's a number of different programs always underway at Hawaii Biotech. When might the public actually get to use one of these vaccines? I know the process of FDA approval is a little long and involved for obvious good reasons, but do you have an estimate of when the public might see one of the vaccines coming out of there?
Well, you know, it's years because of what you just said. It's FDA approval, and of course the FDA is very stringent about what gets approved and what does not.
So it's a while yet then?
It's a while yet, but they are working on a West Nile vaccine, and summer's coming up. So it's always good that there's a vaccine being developed for something that really needs to be addressed in the market, you know, in the present.
Yep, okay. So we've kind of covered the past a little bit. I want to get on to what you're currently up to, and I'd love to hear about, you know, current business that you're involved in, current clients, anything you can share with us. Obviously, you can't share confidential material, but whatever you'd like to tell our viewers about what you're up to.
Well, I really can't talk too much in depth about the companies, as you said, but I'm doing a few things. First of all, Invencor, which was the management company for the various debt and equity funds, that still exists and still manages debt and equity funds. The other side of the house, if you will, works with entrepreneurs, really helping them plan their strategy. Most entrepreneurs have a product. They don't understand it's really not a business until they have a full-fledged strategy on how to take it and the follow-on products to market.
So, Deborah, one of the things we wanted to follow up on is how are women reacting to you as a board member, an advisor, you know, a mentor? What kind of response are you getting from them?
Well, I can tell you these days it's a fabulous response, but 20 years ago it was much different. Women didn't want to listen to women mentors or have women board members. But now it's sort of gelled as a community, and there are many women's groups, and they're very supportive of each other, and it's really wonderful to see.
Now, my understanding is you're also involved at what I would call the organization or association level of helping entrepreneurs. There's a couple different groups you're working with. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, there's two groups in Hawaii. Certainly the Pacific Asian Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Hawaii. And they really work with the students and primarily to teach them entrepreneurial skills and give them opportunities. Then there's a group in Hawaii called High Beam that mentors entrepreneurs one-on-one, probably the more mature entrepreneurs. And then I'm also chair of a group called the Wayne Brown Institute in Salt Lake City.
So tell me, how did you get to Hawaii and Utah from California?
Well, when I ran the national division at Silicon Valley Bank, those territories were part of our expansion.
So do you see any major differences in how entrepreneurship is working across the region there, from Hawaii to California to Utah? Or?
Yes, in fact, all the different geographic hotspots, if you will, it works a little differently.
Okay.
Hawaii has had some stop-starts, but I think that they're on a good path now. Utah had a lot of money. They had a lot of early success, companies like Novell, and so it really was a more successful grassroots effort there.
Okay. And I know that there are a lot of women entrepreneurs out there hopefully watching this show at some point, and is there any particular advice you would like to give them?
Yes, I think that the one mistake most women make is that they don't speak up enough. They don't really ask questions, they don't put themselves out there, they don't say what's on their mind. And we need to do that more as individuals, women, because we have a lot of good things to say and contribute.
Okay. And if I can ask you a little bit about how does the power structure work in these companies? So you've got a set of entrepreneurs, you've got a board. Maybe just fill the audience in a little bit on how that should work, and then actually how it maybe does work.
Well, I think it works like it's supposed to. I mean, the CEO of the company is the top of the management team, and all the managers at one level or another report all the way up to the CEO. The CEO reports to the board, and the board represents the shareholders. So it's our job to make sure that value is continually being built in the companies and help the management team get there.
So my understanding now is you've played several roles over the years. You've been an investor in the companies, you've been on the boards, you've been an advisor or a mentor. I mean, sometimes those overlap. What's the fun part and what's the not so fun part of those different roles?
I really like rolling up my sleeves and working with the entrepreneur to help them build their plan. It's not my plan, but I can help them miss some potholes in the road to make sure that they don't make some mistakes. And the least favorite part is, boy, there are so many. No. I think really when a company gets into trouble, unfortunately sometimes the board members don't agree and it becomes a very tense situation. So we all try to make sure that we have good relationships with the other investors to make sure that we can go forward and fix whatever problems come up.
Okay. Now if somebody's looking in today or when the show appears in their neighborhood, how can they get in touch with you if they want to work with you? They want to engage you as a board member, a consultant, or a mentor, or?
The website is www.invencor.com, and that's a good way to remember it. It's an acronym for International Venture Corporation.
Okay.
So that's the best way.
Okay, and is there anybody in particular you would like to hear from? I mean, any particular type of entrepreneur or vertical or?
Well, my passion is healthcare, so that's probably where I can add the most value.
Okay.
But I love entrepreneurs, so I'm happy to talk to any of them.
Okay. I think that's been a terrific story. Is there anything else you want to tell us that we haven't asked you about?
No, I think you questioned me very well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and good luck with everything out there.
Thank you.
This is Gustavo Chamorro, Director of the Digital Media Center, and you are watching Eye on Business.
Welcome to Eye on Business and our innovation segment, where we look at innovative companies, innovative products, and innovative people. And one of those people is Oli Thordarson, who's with us here today. And Oli, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First of all, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your company. It sounds like you've got a lot going on there, so let's start with that.
Yeah, well, I'm the president of Alvaka Networks.
Okay.
We're an IT service provider. We do performance monitoring and management to help our customers keep their IT systems running the best that they can. We specialize in mid-market companies that are looking for high availability on their systems. We've got local US-based customers, we've got global customers, and everything in between.
Okay. Now, what was your background and how did you get into this?
I was a college student, knew a little bit about programming, and back in the early 80s I helped a neighbor of my parents put together a medical billing system for her medical billing practice, and from there I got referred to one of her clients, and he referred me to a CPA, and I kind of lost track of where the business came from after that.
Okay. But now my understanding is you've done a few different things here. This isn't just your regular old IT service business, right?
Yeah, I think the hallmark for Alvaka Networks is the fact that we run a 24/7 staffed network operations center to help keep our client systems up and running with real high availability. A lot of the clients are doing $1 million a day or more in web transactions or other transactions across their wide area networks, and they just need those systems up and running, and we're the company that helps them do that.
Okay, so now what's different though? I mean, you guys aren't just doing what everybody else does. You've got some slightly different products and services, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's really our distinction is in our tools, our processes, and our people. And we've got some pretty unique tools that monitor the performance of the client systems. And we basically have dashboards that are similar to the dashboard in your car.
Okay.
And those dashboards tell our engineers what the health is of the client's networks, and they can take action before something serious happens to the client network.
And what's an example of something serious happens?
Oh, I mean, there can be problems with mail systems where we can see messages stacking up in a mail queue on a mail server, and that's indicative that it's not sending the messages out like it's supposed to be. People might not know for hours or days otherwise, but we're able to see that within moments of that type of thing happening. There's various database problems that happen with database servers and web transactions. We can monitor those to make sure that all that stuff is working the way it's supposed to be, so that precious revenue dollars aren't lost.
Now, does something serious happens also include security problems, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Security is a big thing these days. Currently, ransomware is. Security problems tend to come in waves. Whatever is faddishly opportunistic to the culprits out there around the world. Ransomware is real common right now, where malware gets onto your computer and your files get encrypted, and then you get a little message that says, "Hey, your files are encrypted, but if you send us some money," the going rate's about $350 on a per PC right now. You send us that money, we'll unencrypt the files and return it back to you. The sad part is that in only about 20% of the cases do they actually unencrypt the files again. So a lot of people are getting screwed twice on that. Not that it was ever good. And another common problem right now is fake antivirus software. The culprits are pretty good about popping up messages on the screen that look like legitimate virus software. They tell you you've got an infection, you start clicking on stuff, and all you're doing is downloading more bad software.
So I'm assuming that that's the kind of business you've got to stay pretty current in, because there's always some new technique or new assault in the wings there. So.
Yeah, and the sad part is it really only takes a few diligent but relatively easy practices to protect the system properly. And patching is a very, very key function, really in many ways more important than your Windows or your company firewall, and maybe oftentimes more important than the antivirus software itself. And then other measures are just, Java software has a lot of problems right now, and don't run Java if you don't need to run it. Or if you do, set it up on a different brand browser on your system and only run that browser when you need to run your Java applications. There are, encrypting of your local hard drives, removing your own administrator rights on your system and only logging in as a system administrator when you need to. There are about 14 or 15 steps like that that are not hard, that will really do wonders in protecting your company network or your personal system at home, or an appliance you're carrying around with you.
Now, what's the innovation cycle like for you guys? In other words, when you hear about a problem, how long does it take to solve the problem and get the fix out to your customers? And
there's no real one answer, simple answer on that. Sometimes we see problems, we powwow, we sit down, we get a few smart people together and they brainstorm, and 10, 15 minutes later they're walking out of the room with a game plan. Other times it takes some studying and some R&D and some experimenting and testing and to figure things out, and that could take 2 or 3 days or longer at times. It depends on the nature of the problem.
So what percentage of the time is the company running standard services versus having to innovate and develop new solutions?
They both go on constantly in
Okay,
parallel.
okay.
You know, of course, we have day-to-day operations going on 24/7, 365 days a year. But the problems that we're presented with every day, I walk in and I take a meandering path through the office, checking with people, saying, "Hey, what's going on?
Okay.
You know, what challenges are you facing?" There's something new every day. And that's what I love about the business is the constant change and challenges that we experience.
So what's the latest one you had to deal with?
Well, the latest challenges are government-derived, new healthcare laws,
All right.
HIPAA, the
Yep.
regulatory, privacy laws for healthcare, and the high-tech laws, not high-tech as in electronics, but high-tech as in healthcare. It's an acronym. It's driving a lot of changes for privacy. The big trend in healthcare and in consumerism right now is keeping your information private and keeping it secure. So the healthcare companies have a whole bunch of new rules to comply with.
Okay.
They need to protect the information. At the same time, they need to make it portable and accessible, which
Okay.
is the challenge. And so we've actually created a new company called Noloki, which is targeted towards providing services and help to the healthcare providers to help them meet their compliance objectives, especially related to HIPAA and high-tech.
So that sounds like an interesting challenge, trying to make information more available and yet less available. So,
Yeah, it's really
how do
almost
you
a
do that?
divergent set of challenges, right? You know, the first thing you want to do when you want to protect something is you want to hold it close,
Yeah, yeah.
not let anybody have access to it. But the other aspect of that privacy law is that it has to be, accessible to the people who need to see it. And it may be within an organization, it may be legitimately authorized people that are within your payment system or your payment network or your treatment network that you have. So yeah, it's a challenge, and it creates opportunities and threats at the same time.
Now, is there particular advice you could give the viewers on what they can do different to better protect themselves, including call 1-800-OLI or?
Yeah, there are a number of things. The compliance with those laws is both partly technology-based and it's process-based and practices-based within the healthcare firms themselves. But the technological base is the key foundation to meeting those objectives. And we're advocating the encryption of the data at rest when it sits on appliances in case this thing gets stolen. If there's private protected healthcare information on this, there are some safe harbor laws that if it gets stolen and the data is encrypted, then you're not going to get in a lot of trouble with the regulatory agencies. You got to encrypt it while it's in transit. You got to know where your data's at. You got to know who's been looking at it, and you've got to be able to have intrusion detection and intrusion prevention systems on your networks. When you have little ports on servers and networks and devices, you got to be able to lock those down so that people can't copy information off onto thumb drives. I could go on and on. There are about 19 discrete areas that I can identify that you really need to treat with a technology-based solution, at least in order to reach your HIPAA compliance objectives.
Okay. Now let's take this to the national and international level. It's been rumored that the U.S. has had a little trouble with other countries trying to steal its data. Do you have any advice for the larger entity here of our country and in the world?
Yeah, these problems that are international and domestic, some of the malware and some of these spyware applications and this cyber espionage that's going on, some of it's very targeted and some is indiscriminate. Some of these pieces of malware just scan and look for vulnerabilities on systems, and they exploit them regardless of who you are. They don't care what system it is. They're just looking for a system that they can exploit. And once they exploit it, they might go in and look around and see what they can find. They might just load more software onto the system to now use your system to go attack another system, help break into the CIA or the White House system or whatever. I mean, those guys have been compromised at times in years past. And other attacks are more targeted. They know exactly who they're going after, and they're going to probe and probe the perimeters of those systems to try and find vulnerabilities. At the same time, they're going to try and socially engineer deals. They're going to send messages to people inside and try and trick them into revealing information. And the whole sole purpose is to steal information that's secret, to find out what the competitors or the enemies are doing, or it might be just to set the system up to be able to take it out at an opportune time during a cyber attack at some point in the future.
So let's bring it back down to something a little more mundane, maybe, in one sense. Race car driving, you have some experience with this. There's a little rumor going around about that.
Yeah, I'm an avid sports car racer, and I like to travel around the country a bit, trying different tracks and different races, and from the regional and national to a little bit of pro racing.
A little bit of pro racing. How do you do a little bit of pro racing?
Means I don't do it full time.
Okay. But that sounds like you've got to be fully engaged when you're doing
it. It's fun, and the challenge and the intensity is great. You get behind the wheel and you get information for the start of a race, and you're waiting for the green flag to start, and I feel like my eyesight gets better, my smell gets keener, my hearing is sharper, and I feel everything that the car is doing, and the adrenaline's pumping. It's quite the
Well, it's
thrill.
impressive you're doing that. You're not doing a little console. You're actually in the car doing this, right?
I'm in the car. Yeah, I'm the driver.
Now, how the heck did you get into that?
I've just been a competitive person for a long time, and drives my wife nuts, but I can't do things casually. When I go in, I'm all in, so I got to go push the envelope.
So.
Up in Thunder Hill in Northern California, one at Laguna Seca the month after, Auto Club Speedway locally. I'll be in Utah.
So is there a number on this car that fans can look for? When
22.
22, okay.
22.
Well, in addition to 22, I want to give you a chance to tell people how they can get in touch with you here, and if they wanted more information on your company or you. Or
Yeah, I'm pretty accessible. I'm always carrying around a device. I got one in my pocket, and I'm always connected. Email is probably the best way to reach me, Oli at alvaka.net. It's OLI at Alvaka, which is ALVAKA.net.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we really appreciate you joining us here today, and good luck for number 22, and good luck with keeping everybody safe and secure.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Oli.
Thank you.
This is Shan Steinmark with Eye on Business, our innovation segment, and thank you for watching.